It's Wednesday, July the 23rd. Lake level is right at 917, just a little over. That's summertime pool, and the water temperature is anywhere from mid 80s up to low 90s. I'm seeing 85 in the morning, and a lot of places I'll get up to 88, 89, and some 90-degree water. Now today's the first time, I think it was about 10 o'clock this morning, they finally shut the water flow down. There's been water, they've been dumping water for almost 2 months straight since we had all this high water. I looked just a little bit ago and they started generating water again, so I'm assuming they're going to try to keep the lake right about this level, about 917 and a half, in that range. They still got a lot of water to dump out of Beaver, so we're still going to see some water flow, but I don't think it's going to be consistent like it was before. So I think what that's going to do is going to start setting that thermocline up a little deeper, and it depends where you're at on the lake. Up in the river arms, it seems to be 20 to 25 foot. A lot of places down lake, it's getting out there at 30 to 35 foot, and that's where, once the sun gets up, you'll find a lot of the fish are kind of congregated out off them long flat gravel points. Now I've been catching fish, multiple different ways. The flipping bite was really good. When that lake level gets down about 918, there's not a whole lot of bushes left in the water, but it was really good this past week because the fish that had been in behind the bushes finally got out to the outside edge of them where you could catch them. And now that the water's dropping out of the bushes, them fish are pulling, further back out where you can catch them offshore. And a lot of the fish that we've been catching have been all pretty much structure fish, brush piles, rock piles, long points with creek channels that pull up along one side of them, and catching a lot of fish on football jigs, anywhere from a 5/8 ounce up to a 3/4. Big worms, a lot of colors that are working good, like green pumpkin orange, PBJ will work as well. And I'm using any kind of twin tail trailer on them. One thing we're catching a little bit bigger fish on is like wobble heads or swing heads with a Zoom Magnum trick worm. Another one we've been catching some on is a 5-fish lures, a Magnum shaky head. I'm throwing either a 5/8 or 3/4 ounce. And I'm throwing a big worm on it, 12 and a half inch worm. Good thing about this shaky head, it's got a real stout hook. It's got a 6/0 hook in it. It works out good on the big worms. But a lot of the colors on the worm, green pumpkin, I'm dipping the tail with a little bit of chartreuse. Watermelon candy will work good too. And red bud is working. So as this water's kind of pulled down, a lot of these fish are gonna start congregating on these brush piles. A lot of the brush piles, a week or two ago, the water was almost too deep. But now that it's got down, there's a lot of brush piles in that 25 to 35 foot range. To me, it doesn't seem, we're gonna see, this next week's gonna tell us how the fish are gonna react to the water slowing down, because they have had constant flow, like I said, for 2 months. And when you did find them on a lot of the points and a lot of the humps, they were pretty well piled up. I think we're going to start to see a lot of them fish scatter and not be as grouped up, where before they were more related to where the current flow is. Starting to catch a lot more fish out of deeper treetops where, you might be in 50 foot of water, but the fish is suspended 25 to 30 foot deep in the trees and in the tops of them. And what really works out good with my Livescope mount, where I've got my Livescope transducer mounted on it, I can spot lock in an area. It seems like I can't get right on top of the fish. I almost got to be casting to them. So I can set up about 40, 50 feet away from the tree or the brush pile that I'm fishing and make several casts to them fish without getting a boat over the top of them. And like I say, there's times that's a lifesaver, especially when the wind's blowing. You can set yourself up downwind, keep the boat in the same position You don't have to fight the trolling motor, and you can present your bait where it needs to be, into the trees or into the brush. But in them trees, I'm throwing a lot of drop shot rigs, a lot of 4-inch missile mini worms, Morning Dawn, John's Juice, PBJ seems to be working real well. And another thing I'm catching them on there is a slab spoon and like a James Watson worldwide spoon as well. But I've been throwing a 7/8 ounce and a 1/2 ounce, a Dixie Jet slab spoon, and also a smaller Dixie Jet flutter spoon. But that's where that, being able to lock down with the trolling motor, keep the boat in one position away from the tree where you can make multiple casts in there. A lot of the places the last few days we found a lot of big white bass mixed in with the Kentuckys and largemouth. And we're catching quite a variety of fish out of them trees. And they seem to be, since they've slowed the water down, I'm finding them a lot more piled up in the trees. Whether that's going to continue the next week or so, we'll have to wait and see. But like I say, they're going to keep running water, probably not as much as what they have been, because Beaver Lake's got a lot of water to let out of that lake. But the flip and bite, a thing to look at if you like to fish shallow and flip, start concentrating on some of the boat docks. A couple of weeks ago, a lot of the boat docks were out too deep. They couldn't even get them up to the shore. But now them fish have pulled out of the willows and out of the buckbrush. Some of those shallower boat docks are going to be the first place that they'll go to. I'm talking like, 20 foot or less. Fish the stalls and the walkways. It's a good place for them. If you still like to flip, you can take and flip a jig around them docks. But we're just going to have to wait and see what the lack of water flow does to the fish. I'm sure it's going to change it. But for the most part, the fishing's still been really good. You got to, mix it up, do a lot of different things. I've mainly been staying in the river arms. That's where I like to fish the best this time of year. I don't have to fish as deep, and I feel like I got more options. I don't have to stay out there in that super deep water. There's still even on the football jig and the big worm, a lot of them fish, once the sun gets up, they're out there 20, some of them as deep as 30. But the first couple hours in the morning, a lot of them are pretty shallow and, 8 to 20 feet. And once that sun gets up, they seem to pull back out and kind of set up on roll-offs, like if you're up against a main creek or a bluff end or channel swing. Once that sun gets up good and high, then fish seem to be pulling out there a little bit deeper and getting off the edge of them drops. So that's something to keep in mind. So till next week, good luck, good fishing.